Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the program, Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Glad you're along for the ride. We have baseball. If you missed it last night, Phillies and Padres are tied 1 game apiece. The Astros go up 1-0 over the Yankees. Astros, I forgot, they're looking to go like their 5th time in the last 8 years to the World Series. Yankees are trying to get back for the first time in over 13 years. It doesn't hurt my feelings that the Yankees haven't been to the World Series. College football, App State gets back on in the winning category, beats Georgia State, struggles in the first half. Tonight, you got some NFL and some college ball and baseball. But we're going to go talk a little college football with our college football analyst, Brent Beaird, on the Titan MR hotline. Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Little chilly over here in Clay County, but I like it. But it will be warming up to about 70, and there's going to be some football play tonight with Georgia Tech and Virginia, and a whole lot of good games this weekend that will warm things up.
That is true. Brent, we just got a text on the Titan MR text line before we jump in college football. It's Michael up in Bartlett, Tennessee. He says, have I heard about a Netflix 4-part series about the 2008 Gators team called the Swamps of Florida? Have you heard anything about it? Or what are your thoughts? Thanks for the text, Michael. No, I mean, I think I've heard a little bit about it, but I know nothing about it. I don't know when it's supposed to be aired. I don't even have Netflix, so I guess I won't be watching it. Brandon, have you heard anything about that?
I really haven't. So, I mean, I would be interested in knowing more about it, but as at this point, no.
Yeah. So, all right, Brent, we got a lot of games. First of all, I want to get your thoughts. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute when we get to it. We got some big games. A big one in Death Valley. Ole Miss and LSU is a big one, but there are some. It's not like last week with undefeated teams playing undefeated teams for the most part, but there are some good games this weekend around the country.
Yeah, Syracuse and Clemson is one of the bigger games. Ole Miss at LSU, UCLA at Oregon. UCLA, if the Pac-12 have a playoff team, which I'm not sure they will, people are having their hopes more on maybe on UCLA. Texas is up to 20. They play at number 11, Oklahoma State. Memphis at Tulane. And Kansas State, TCU, Mississippi State at Alabama, Cincinnati at SMU, and Minnesota at Penn State. I mentioned Tulane being number 25. This is the first time in 24 years that they have been in the AP Top 25. They were actually 12-0 and number 7 in the 1998 final poll. I don't know if you know Willie Fritz, Shane, but this guy is a solid football coach, and frankly, he may not be at Tulane much longer.
No, Tulane has had they've had a good little run under him since he's taken over that program, and they're a good football team. There's no question about it. Brent, I was looking at the strength of schedule of the current top 10 teams.
Yes.
And I'll let you run through it, and I got a comment on something after you're done telling us the rankings.
Well, this time of year, and I think it particularly means something that when you actually look at the strength of schedule. Now, Georgia is 76th. Ohio State is 82. Tennessee is 12. Michigan is 73. Clemson is 64. Alabama is 6. Ole Miss, which is undefeated, is 109.
Yeah.
ECU 80. Now UCLA, we just talked about, is 100, and Oregon is 16. But again, to me, the two that stick out, and please comment about this, Shane, Ohio State at 82 and Ole Miss at 109.
Yeah, that's why, I say it every week on our show, it seems like, and we talk a lot of SEC football. And I said a couple of weeks ago, Kentucky is not a top 10 team. Ole Miss is not a top 10 team, but they are who they are. I mean, I think it goes to show you where college football is, that some of these teams just aren't very good, but if you're undefeated, you're going to be up there. What surprises me, look, Ohio State, they're sitting at 82nd in strength of schedule. I don't care. My eye test tells me they're damn good. Okay.
Yes.
They got dudes.
Yes.
But what surprises me is Tennessee's strength of schedule at 12. Is that only because of Alabama? Because, I mean, they beat Florida, but Florida's sitting at 4-3. I don't know how it's all calculated, but, I mean, I guess because we played a decent schedule. Does that have anything to do with it?
Probably. They also played Pitt.
Which Pitt stinks,
Florida,
by the way.
Yeah, they do. But here's Tennessee's schedule: Ball State, Pittsburgh, Akron, Florida, LSU, and Alabama. So obviously, Florida, LSU, Alabama really helps the schedule as you go in there. But that's a valid point. Where do they get that strength of schedule from? I mean, they've got a formula for doing this. But yes, no doubt helped by the SEC teams.
Yeah. Andy has a good question here for you, Brent, on Facebook Live, brought to you by Metal Law. He says, Brent, after 8 weeks, in your opinion, who has the best college football team in the state of Florida?
That is a really good question, frankly. You could. I'm looking at schedules here real quick, and we won't belabor the time here. Now South Florida is 1-6.
They stink. They're out. FIU is out.
Yes, and I'm looking for UCF. It could be.
They probably have the best record, I think, right?
Probably. I'm looking. See if they're in Central Florida or UCF. Okay, let's look some further here. UAB, USF. Well, I don't know what's so hard about finding this.
I don't think there are any good teams in the state of Florida, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. You can make that argument. Now, I do think that, and I know they've lost 3 in a row, and they had a couple of those games that they should have won. I do think Florida State's improved. Now, Florida State, a great team, no. I think we know they're not, but the reality is I think they have gotten better. Frankly, Miami is still inconsistent, and they are up and down, too. So Miami is, they're 3-3. So, I mean, Shane's point's a good one. That they're really, right now, there really is no one that is outstanding in the state. I mean, I think they're all getting a little better, and particularly Florida's going to be better. I think Miami is going to be better because they'll eventually have better players, or they're going to have the coaching to go with it. We'll see. But I mean, we spent a while on that. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, you could take Florida, Miami, and FSU. They could play one of those high school jamborees where you play somebody different each quarter. They could do that for a week, and I think they'd all come out to be about the same record.
Probably.
Brent, I talked about this the other day on my show. I think I talked about it every day, but the records in the last 14 SEC games of the bottom tier of the conference.
Yes.
Boy, it's hard to look at this, and it's hard to swallow.
It is. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we figured Vandy would be 0-14. Unfortunately, Florida's 3-11, and it's hard to ignore that right now. And then you've got Missouri and South Carolina, who are both 4-10, and you've got Auburn and Arkansas, who now I think we both would say Arkansas is in much better shape than Auburn, but they're 5-9, both of them. So yeah, that's those records aren't anything to be shouted about right now. But that, unfortunately, your record's who you are at this point.
Yeah, and you have listed here the odds of the next college football coach to be fired.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Brian Harsin is going to be number one with that. Jeff Scott, as we mentioned a few minutes ago at South Florida. Scott Satterfield at Louisville is on here. He's number 3. I don't particularly like odds like this, but unfortunately, they are part of what we do. Satterfield, I still think, is a pretty good football coach, as is Neil Brown, who's also on this list for West Virginia. Neil Brown did a great job at Troy, and he's still trying to get his feet underneath him. And Brady Hoke is the last one. So anyway, these things can change if teams go on runs, and hopefully they'll have some success. But again, Brian Harsin's number 1 on the list, and I'm just telling you, Shane, they still are playing hard. They've still got some good players, but they just don't have enough of them.
No, they don't. We got another text here on the Titan Mark text line for Jimmy, and I was getting ready to ask you this. He wants to know who your top 3 Heisman contenders are at the moment.
Well, I think you'd have to put. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is going to be 1, 2, or 3 with everybody. I think it's obvious that Hendon Hooker is shot up the list. And look, when he's healthy, Bryce Young is still easily one of the best quarterbacks anywhere. Now, Blake Corum has joined the list, the Michigan running back, so give him some credit. You can't ignore Caleb Williams either. I mean, even in the loss to Utah, he had 438 yards and 5 touchdowns. And again, the thing we've got to remember is this is like the national championship. No one wins a national championship in October, and no one wins the Heisman in October either. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of guys who have been great who about the end of October, and then the schedule toughens up, and then they just kind of disappear. So right now with C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker, and Bryce Young, that's still pretty strong 3.
Yes, no question. And I think if Alabama runs the ball at the end of the game and makes the field goal, Bryce Young wraps up the Heisman Trophy with that performance he had. Boy, that was unbelievable.
It was.
Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Doreen Weeby, a realtor with Caldwell Banker, Emma Parish, will provide you fast, friendly, reliable service. Call her today at 352-562-1411. Help your dreams come true. Speaking with Brent Beaird here on the Titan More Hotline, we'll have Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel join us a little bit later. I know Billy Napier had a big press conference yesterday. He'll fill us in on some of the quotes and comments from Coach Napier. Brent, let's move around the SEC. Alabama, how will they respond at home to Mississippi State? Mississippi State's coming off a game that it's just those games that it seems like Mike Leach teams lose every year. They're supposed to win it. They go lay an egg. Now they make my second best team in the West look like a bad pick. But how do you see this Alabama-Mississippi State game going?
Mississippi State has, for years, been a get-well game for Alabama, and that possibly will happen, too. In the loss to Kentucky, Will Rogers was 25-37 for 203. They did not run the ball well at all. State didn't. And as a matter of fact, State really hardly ran the ball at all. But look, they've still got a good system. This is still a good football team, without a doubt. Now, what also happened, people may not have heard this, but a freshman, Sam Westmoreland, 19 years old from Tupelo, he was an offensive lineman. He had not played yet, but unfortunately he died yesterday.
I saw that.
Shane, I don't know if you've ever been on a team where a player died in the middle of the year, but that's tough stuff. And you never know, do you, Shane, how a team's going to respond to a situation like that. But I mean, I think State will probably play well. I mean, Will Rogers will give the Alabama secondary some problems. I don't think there's any question about that. They're obviously, and again, even with all the problems Alabama had in the game, as Shane said, if they run the ball 2 or 3 times, kick field goal, they win the game, and people are looking at this differently. But look, there's some things this Alabama team you can't ignore. You can't ignore the problems in the secondary. You can't ignore why they did not put more pressure on Hendon Hooker, and the penalties or something that. And I know they're trying to address these, but a lot of them are pre-snap. A lot of them are pass interference. I know there were a lot of controversy with the officials who, frankly, were abysmal on both sides of the ball in the Tennessee-Alabama game. But again, I mean, with the talent Alabama's got, if they run the table, they'll be back in Atlanta playing either Georgia or Tennessee. But look, they've got, as you've said, Shane, they've got the talent to beat anybody, but they're also capable because of some of their lack of discipline with penalties to where they can get themselves in trouble and have another one-possession game in the fourth quarter with almost anybody.
Yeah, they've had the last couple of years a ton of penalties, especially on the road. People calling Alabama an undisciplined team, but you talked about their issues in the secondary. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say the head coach has not forgot how to coach because he coaches the secondary. These Gator fans get so upset with how defenses are playing around the country these days. When Alabama's having trouble stopping people, the game has changed. And again, Nick Saban coaches the secondary at the University of Alabama. So it's very interesting. Brent, we got a question here. Corey wants to know, where did you grow up? You didn't grow up in North Florida. You're from Alabama, right?
I was born in Tuscaloosa, and I grew up in Jasper, Alabama.
Yeah.
So I've lived in Alabama. I've lived in Fort Worth, Texas, and have lived here since 85. So I've lived here now longer than I have anywhere. And frankly, it in many ways is, from friends and football and church and everything else that we do here has, very much become home. So, but yes, that's a brief biography. How about that?
That was a good one. Okay, so Arkansas and Auburn. Arkansas wins at BYU. They're off. Auburn is off. Auburn, they put up a lot of yards. Excuse me, points against Ole Miss, but boy, their first couple of series against Ole Miss. I mean, the first quarter they had like 3 turnovers.
Yeah,
and Ole Miss didn't do anything. Their quarterbacks just like dropped the ball multiple times. Anything that they can do to get the ship heading in the right direction, or they are who they are.
Well, that's a good question. Now, first of all, I'll say this real quick. That was a real big win for Arkansas over BYU to go on the road and get that. KJ Jefferson was really good. Rocket Sanders had 175 yards. And then they, ironically enough, they're off. Then they play Auburn next week. Auburn, on the other hand, really played Ole Miss well. Frankly, Robbie Ashford did a serviceable job. He's not great. What they did that they've been needing to do, and Shane's mentioned this before too, is run your offense through Tank Bigsby. He's one of the better running backs in the league. He gained 179 yards, which was important. In the first 20 games in Auburn history, Doug Barfield was 9-11. Brian Harsin is 9-11. Shane, you remember this? Terry Bowden was 20-0. Gene Chizik 15-4, and Gus was 17-3. So the problem right now for Auburn too, we thought this would be a better defense than it has been. But Ole Miss ran for 448 yards, which is a record in a lot of ways. 3 different players from Ole Miss had over 100 yards. So Auburn doesn't have the personnel, frankly, even though they ran the ball for 301 yards. They're playing hard, and they're playing as well as they can with the talent, or maybe the lack of talent that they've got. And I still say, and a lot of people won't agree, that Brian Harsin will never probably have the time that he should have had at Auburn.
Let's move on to the Gators. They're bye week along with Georgia. Andy has a question here regarding the Gators. Brent, do you think the Gators' poor defense will actually help recruiting going forward on that side of the ball?
Oh yeah. Look, you can sell playing time immediately, and that means a lot to players. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And look, people can argue about the assistants and so forth. Folks, you just got to be patient here. I say this every week, and I'll say it again. You've got a coaching staff that knows what they're doing. They've got to have time to recruit, and they've got to have time to be able to develop their players. And it ain't going to happen the first year, is it, Shane?
No. I mean, I said 7 wins would be Coach of the Year material. And
yeah, really.
I'm just hoping we can get to 6, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So let's kind of jump ahead. As you said, Georgia's off as well. They're the number 1 team in the country still. I mean, what do the Gators? We'll talk more about this next week. I don't know the status of a lot of the Georgia players. Are they kept somewhat healthy? Do they have people hurt? What can the Gator fans look at this game, Brent, and have some hope?
Well, they do have some guys hurt. Inside linebacker, Small Molden has an ankle that has been giving him problems. A.D. Mitchell, one of their better wide receivers, is still not involved with much practice. Jalen Carter, one of the better defensive tackles in the league, is doing some conditioning. Kendall Milton, the running back, has a groin injury that's getting better. Lad McConkey has a turf toe. I don't know if you've ever had turf toe, Shane, but I hear that's terrible. So he's trying to get better with that. Carson Beck, the backup's playing better. Eric Gilbert, a tight end, is actually had a good game last week. Now, look, and I'll be brief about this. Get into it more next week. This is I know what they're ranked. I understand who they are, but this is not a great team yet. Now, they may be before it's over, but you can look at them, and they go in spurts. I mean, they'll be very pedestrian for a quarter or a quarter and a half. Then they step it up. I mean, they've still got Brock Bowers. They've still got Stetson Bennett, and that they've still got really good players. But this team is not as good as the team they had last year. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it is. And with that said, they can still go to Atlanta. Yep, they'll have a mammoth game with Tennessee that's coming up. They still got Kentucky, still got Mississippi State. So I mean, the truth of the matter is, Georgia's the back half of their schedule is really going to be tough for them, and they will earn Atlanta if they go there.
Yeah, I said, after they played first couple of games this year, I thought they were better than last year. I don't know if they are or not. We will see. Right. But as you said, they could be bored. They could just not be playing well because every team goes through those stretches throughout the year. Really, the only good game in the conference this week is the big one in Baton Rouge, where Ole Miss undefeated. Yes. And I don't think people may not. I mean, I grew up in Mississippi, so I know about this rivalry. It's these two schools do not like one another.
Nope.
And I got a funny feeling that LSU is going to win this game. What you think on this Brent game in Baton Rouge?
I think that could very well happen. I mean, LSU is beginning to get it together. I'm curious what you thought about Jaden Daniels.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah, he really was. I mean, 349 yards. He ran for 3 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's a true dual threat. The guy who finally stepped up for LSU was Kayshon Boutte, who caught 6 passes for 115 yards. He's been on the side of the milk carton for most of the year, mostly with his attitude, and hopefully that's getting better. But this is a really interesting contrast in teams in some ways. Ole Miss is the best running team in the league. We never thought we'd say that, but that's kind of where they are. Jackson Dart's coming along as quarterback. He's a dual threat. Their strength is in their running backs, and Quinshon Judkins and Zach Evans, who both really done well. Now, I talked to a friend who is with the Ole Miss radio network this week, and I said, "How do they finish?" And he said, he said they're good and they're undefeated, but he said I still think they lose a couple of games down the stretch. He said Bama is just better, and there's going to be another game, maybe LSU, could be Mississippi State, but so this Lane has got them at a good point. I think we can all say that. It's obvious the program is better, but and I still say, Shane, when Brian Kelly has his assortment of players, LSU is going to be LSU again. That's coming.
Yeah. A couple of Facebook Lives brought to you by Mental Law. Money asked, Florida's defense makes every opposing QB look like a Heisman candidate. That's not true. Will Levis didn't play great against us. If you go back and watch the game, Jaden Daniels made some of the unbelievable throws. There was nobody running wide open in this game. I mean, he was dropping them in. He was hitting them in stride. So it had nothing to do with the Gator defense. Alan says, so can we line up with Georgia? No. I mean, that's my answer to that question. What would your answer to be to that?
I still think that the strength of this team is with the offensive line and the running backs. Can they come up with some kind of a stalemate at the line of scrimmage and get these running backs into space? I'll be curious as far as how creative that Florida can get. But you're right. I mean, just roster on roster, Georgia. And again, what we got to remember, Georgia's had about 5 years of top 3 recruiting classes, which Florida will eventually have that themselves somewhere down the line here with Billy Napier. But Georgia's got a very much the advantage on the roster as far as talent. Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we got a text here from Robert. Robert says, so, hey, guys, how many players for Florida would start at Georgia? I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, but I would say not many.
Yeah.
That's just right off the top of my head without really breaking it down. I don't know Georgia's roster that well. I know last year, I would say nobody. Maybe Kyer Elam last year. But this year, I don't know. But their roster is clearly different than ours.
It is.
Brent, let's talk ACC. As you said, there's a big game between Clemson and Syracuse, both teams undefeated. Syracuse, I don't know when the last time they've been undefeated, but they have that Mississippi State transfer at quarterback.
That's right.
Do they have a chance at Death Valley?
Well, maybe. I mean, Garrett Schrader, as you mentioned, is playing well. Frankly, Sean Tucker, their running back, second in the league with 644 yards. And then this Orlandi Gadsden, the second, is second in the league in receiving yards. So they've got some talent, frankly, and they've surprised a lot of people. They beat NC State 24-9 last week, but Clemson is really coming on. DJ Uiagalelei is playing much better. He's healthy, and he was 15 of 23 for 203 in the Florida State game. What's really helped them, Shane, is Will Shepley, the running back, is playing well. He had 121 yards against FSU, third in the league in rushing. I think Syracuse can stay in the game. but I think Clemson just got too much. And to their credit, and again, they play in a league that's not as good as the SEC or the Big Ten. But to Clemson's credit, they're improving. They're getting better on a weekly basis. And by the way, when we mentioned Uwe Unglele a minute ago, and their three biggest games in the season, Wake, NC State, and FSU, and that's what they played so far, Unglele has had 12 touchdowns and 0 turnovers. So, Shane, compared to last year, that's significant improvement for him, is it not?
No doubt about it. He was not playing well at all, but he has played much better this year. Brent, great stuff as always. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week, Florida-Georgia week next week, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, it's unbelievable. And listen, I love the game here. I'm hoping and praying it stays here. I think Jacksonville's going to throw a lot of money in it, and we'll talk more about that next week. But it's always a fun week. Enjoy the games, and Shane, I always enjoy being on with you.
Yes, sir. That's Brent Beaird, a college football analyst, joining us on the Titan More Hotline. Going to take a quick timeout. Come back. We'll be joined by Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel, who'll give us a breakdown of Billy Napier's press conference yesterday. You're watching and listening to Pod with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogra State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wiebe Realtor Caldwell Banker MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Adams Rib Company, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, MB Listing, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Avra and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, visit podupwithshane.com and click the Advertise button. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the show. If you like what we are doing here, make sure you follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Points, where the Gators go to celebrate, with premium brands like Keys Bar and Grill, Medici's, Regal, Cinemas, Dave & Buster's, Nike, Le Macaron, the Gadget Guys, and the HBC's restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, now selling Head Beer Coach American Lager in 16-ounce cans at Spurrier's, Visors, and Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. We'll see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators go to celebrate. We're going to now head back to the Titan More Hotline, and we're going to be joined by Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel, who looks like he's in Madison, Wisconsin, with his turtleneck sweater. Good morning, Edgar. How are you?
I'm ready to go duck hunting, man, with my camo sweater.
I see that.
This thing's warm. Kept me warm in a duck blind many days.
Yeah. So Edgar, let's go ahead and jump right into the Gators. I got some other stuff down the road I want to talk to you about, but Billy Napier had a press conference yesterday, correct?
Well, he did an SEC teleconference, but he did talk. It's the only time we're going to get him this week, and he addressed some things.
Real quick, Andy's got a question for you, Edgar. It sounds like Lorenzo Lingard will be getting carries going forward. Will he be taking them from Montrell or Trevor, or is Naquan Wright just out of the rotation? That surprised all of us in the press box Saturday night, because we usually know they kind of come tell us, who's definitely not playing, things of that nature. But I mean, I didn't even see Naquan in the game. I don't know what's going on. But were you surprised to see Lingard out there?
I was. Yesterday, that was one of the things I asked Billy about, because he's local for us, Orange City kid, star out of the Orlando area. And he said he's just been practicing great. And that's how you get on the field with these guys. He goes, we're in year one, competitions daily. and we're trying to reward good practice performances. And he made the most of it to me. I mean, 9-yard run, had that nice little catch where it was a little short pass, and he ran a guy, didn't run him over, but just kind of drove him an extra several yards for a first down. Looked good to me. I don't know where he's been hiding. I mean, the guy has one touchdown, and that was an Eastern Washington touchdown in the 5 points for the Gators in that game a few weeks ago. And then he didn't even have 200 yards rushing in 3 years. So been kind of a mystery, but I don't know if he's going to take carries from Montreal or Trevor. Those guys look pretty good. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's one of the things about the Gators. It is good right now is that 1-2 punch. But yeah, Naquan might fade into the background a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the running game is what it is. That's really the only strength of this football team is the tailback room and what the offensive line has done. Shane says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, come on, we are the worst third down defense ever created, period, scheme or personnel. This is the worst D in over 40 years. Well, we're not arguing with that. we are. And like I said, people can blame the coach. They can blame the players. It is what it is. But I've had zero problem with the way we've lined up, especially against Missouri. That was just awful. Angles, tackling, understanding football by the players. The third downs against LSU, I have to go back and watch again, but a lot of those were third and shorts, which you're going to convert those. But I thought, Edgar, I said this all week long, and people think it's because of our defense. I thought Jaden Daniels was outstanding against us, made unbelievable throws. And again, LSU has some dudes on the outside at wide receiver. That may have been the best group of receivers we faced all year long.
Those guys are long. They go win the ball. I mean, they made some plays for sure. I remember the fog game, 2020, the shoe game, whatever you want to call that one. Those guys were down to 48 players, LSU. They didn't have anybody. They barely had a team. And I'm looking down on that field, and I remember at halftime telling Casty Hill, who's not here anymore, and Mark Long, I'm like, that team has some players. They're like, what? I'm like, I'm serious. Look at the athletes on this team, the length, speed of this team. They're just deep, man. All right, here you go, though, Shane. I'm going to push back a little bit. 3rd and 8. Okay, 3rd and 8 was their first third down, 40-yard game. 3rd and 6.
But I need to know what the play was, though. Just reading that's not going to do me any good. Was it a great throw?
They were 3rd and 8 and threw a 40-yard pass to Boutte. You remember it was out on the sideline and they beat.
Oh, no, I know exactly what that was. We were in a soft cover 2. They ran a well-designed play to throw a dig route to Boutte to hit him on the left hash.
Yep.
We got no pressure on Daniels. Daniels had him wide open in the first window because all our underneath people jumped the short routes, and then he scrambled and Boutte. That was pass rush issues. You can't let a guy.
Well, there were a lot of those. There were a lot of those the other night. Look, and we don't need to go through all this, man, but 3rd and 6, 3rd and 15, they got 14 yards and got a first down on 4th. Shane, they were 9 of 10 on their first 10 third down attempts, and the only one they stopped, they got it on 4th. So 10 of 10, basically. It was brutal. They've given up 52% now. Okay, last in the nation. The 2007 and 2020 defenses, which I think we can all agree have been the 2 worst defenses prior to this year in the last 15 years, were 41%. So it's bad.
But there's nothing that can be done. I mean, you can cover 0 all-out blitz, but you know what that does? That really gives your guys one-on-ones and opportunities to score touchdowns immediately. So feast or famine, whatever the fans want. I've said it, and I told you multiple times, the problem with this defense is what?
Well, you said talent.
Well, I'm talking about the position group. It's the front 7.
Oh, yeah, the front 7, which we talked about coming in the season.
Yeah.
Was like
it ain't your corners. I love our corners. Safeties, that's a different story. But the front 7 is so far below average for SEC play. It's been that way for years, and that should be the number one, which they are addressing that. But I know you're going to sign some kids. I would go try to find JUCO players. I'd try to find every damn person in the portal that's played on film that you think can possibly help your team, and I'd go get them.
Yeah, they have a pretty nice D-line or front seven class shaping up, I think. Let's see. I mean, Kelby Collins, is their top guy. Cameron James. I mean, these, TJ Searcy, Will Norman, those are all top 200 D linemen. So that's solid for sure. They had a couple visits last week from a couple Alabama kids from Montgomery Carver who are like, one's like 20 D linemen and the other's like top 40 edge rusher. So they're addressing it, as you say. They see it. They get it. But can they get those guys, the top cream of the crop guys? It'd be nice if they could get one or two of those guys. So anyway, yeah, it's an issue, man. They didn't walk into a great situation, and they certainly haven't made it better.
No, at Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Speaking with Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel, we've had a bunch of people sit here talking about it's the scheme. The scheme ain't going to change. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Well, Billy, by the way, go ahead. You go, and I'll tell you what Billy said about Patrick Toney. I asked him about him yesterday.
What's that? I was reading something.
Finish your thought, but I'll tell you what he said about Patrick Toney because I asked him yesterday about Patrick.
He says Patrick Toney's one of the best coaches he's ever coached with.
Yeah.
And I've told people this, and maybe I didn't tell you, but I saw Will Muschamp in town recruiting in the spring. He goes, dude, y'all got a stud as a defense coordinator.
Okay.
So, and I trust, I mean, people say what they want to say about Will, but when you talk defense, the dude knows what he's talking about.
Yes, there's no doubt. I don't know enough about Patrick Toney, and the knock on him so far that isn't like scheme and X and O related is this, like, he's 32. Not saying you can't be great at 32. Everyone's 32 at some point. And then the fact that he hadn't had a Power 5 job. So he comes from Southeastern Louisiana to Sam Houston to Louisiana. So that's the only like questions people had when he was made the play caller on defense, because he's co-defensive coordinator with, Sean Spencer, I believe, in title at least. But yeah, hey, look, you can't just like make some judgment off 7 games. That'd be like, I told someone, they'd be like, okay, let's say the New York Times comes to me tomorrow and says, we want you to come cover the Yankees. It'd be hard to turn that job down, even though I don't like baseball. But bottom line is, I'm in that locker room in the first year, I'm getting my butt handed to me. I have no idea. I don't know anybody. I don't know it's all new to these guys. You can't make a rush to judgment in 7 games, but it does look bad. And I get the frustration because it's bad.
Yeah. Dan says on Facebook Live, do you think getting the one and done DL transfers is a good thing? It's probably not a great thing. It used to be you did not want to build your program around junior college guys. I think the landscape has changed. Look at Ole Miss. I think they added 28 transfers to this year's team. I think
how many are
Tennessee added a ton. So it's
well, Dan did it last year, don't forget. He brought in Truesdale, Newkirk, and Shelton. Newkirk was hurt a lot. Truesdale was a non-factor. Shelton was okay, I guess. So he tried to do it with that plug and play. But they have like some very promising, as I pointed out, young guys if they can get them get them signed. Because this Kelvin Collins, Bama's pushing for him. I mean, he's a Bama guy.
But here's the thing. Even that's why I don't care if you only get them for 1 year, if you rent a player for a year, because even these kids you're talking about coming out of high school,
they got to develop.
Well, just because they come sign with you, it doesn't mean they're not going to be a one and done and go somewhere else. They can do it. That's Edgar. Andy has a question for you here, brought to you by Meldon Law. Are you still a big Des Watson fan, or can we agree that he's a goal line defensive guy only?
I've lost my love for Des.
Look, he's a great story, but that goes to show you. And
he does not move laterally.
Do not take this wrong. he has zero business being on the field unless it's goal line situation only. Zero.
He was pushing Kentucky's guys into the backfield, and now we realize that Kentucky was like that offensive line. I think you even said afterwards was terrible, and they had moved like I think guys were like four different positions. Four guys were in new positions or something. They were trying to find a formula that night, despite winning. But yes, he has definitely been a non-factor since. And
Yeah,
hey, look, hopefully he keeps developing. I mean, he's got some upside maybe, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he's a goal line defensive guy only. That's it. When he's out in the middle of the field, it's a liability. I've had buddies of mine that played pro ball a long time ago. Why are y'all playing that guy? I was like, we ain't got anybody else. So, what else did Billy say that caught your ear? Anything? I know he talks about self scouting and all that during the bye week. What else did he talk about?
I mean, he's all about quality control. He uses that phrase all the time, that they're quality controlling everything. It's one reason he has this monster staff. They're constantly reviewing, probing, evaluating everything. We'll see how it works long term. I think the guys, we've talked about this. The guy's got a plan. He believes in his process. And it's way too early to judge. He walked into a situation where he knows he's got to recruit. He knows, look, there is going to be major attrition after this season. Don't you think? We saw Josh Braun leave this week. I mean, a lot of guys leaving.
Oh, yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, and he left early because he wanted to preserve his redshirt year, which, look, it is what it is. Just because people leave doesn't mean there's problems in the program. Kids want to play. You can only play so many guys. Now, this comment here, and I'm not jumping on Jeff, but this shows you the way Florida fans think, but don't understand where the Florida program is. He says the way Florida's playing, Vandy will have a chance against us. Well, if you read what I said earlier, which has been going all over Twitter, and Brent Beaird and I talked about it, the bottom tier of the SEC's last 14 games, we're only ahead of Vanderbilt in wins.
Is that right?
Oh, you didn't. So Edgar, you have not heard this?
What?
So just think about this right here. In the last 14 games, Vanderbilt's 0-14.
I'm trying to pull up your Twitter right here.
Well, I didn't put it on Twitter. Somebody sent it to me. Just text it to me.
Okay.
Vanderbilt's 0-14 in the last 14 games. Florida's 3-11. Missouri's 4-10. South Carolina's 4-10. Auburn and Arkansas are 5-9.
Dang.
Think about that.
Send that to me. No, that's brutal.
It's reality, though. And
it's reality. So Billy yesterday, he did talk about Osiris Torrance, just to give people like a little news here, that he is making progress. And he was asked if Naquan was healthy, and he said he hasn't been on the injury report. And he kind of said it curtly. I don't think he liked the question. But the bottom line is Osiris Torrance coming back is going to be essential. But let's move on to Georgia for a sec, because I don't know, and I haven't really watched them much. I mean, the Oregon win is the most impressive non-conference win of the season. Now, they haven't been that team week after week. But, I mean, they're giving up 9 a game on defense. It's going to... What's the line going to be on this thing? I mean, what do you got to make the line to get somebody to bet on Florida? Like 3 scores?
I thought somebody mentioned it on one of my shows.
It was like 17.
I think it's like it was like 14 or 15, maybe. One of my listeners will probably tell us here as we're talking about it. I thought Georgia at the beginning of the year was better than they were last year. They still could be. You've seen national championship, really high quality.
Bennett looks a lot better.
Go through spurts where they don't play real well. What's amazing to me is I think Georgia's like last in the SEC in sacks, which is kind of misleading, I believe, because they're pressuring the hell out of quarterbacks. Dan says Kent State ran on Georgia. Yeah, like I don't like to look at, because every game is different. We don't know who was playing in that Kent State game. We don't know. It was Kent State. They will be ready to play in the Gator Bowl. I can promise you that.
Well, they need Torrance.
I think they're really good.
They need Torrance because they got to run the football, man, and shorten the game. I mean, obviously.
What is his injury? Do you know?
I think he's got a little bit of a knee issue.
Okay.
I think he's going to be back. I mean, these guys, they're young. They recover fast, and it'll be 2 solid weeks by the time that game. I mean, look at Ventrell Miller. How quickly he got back on the field. Without him, where would this team be? Kid's been incredible. He's having an all SEC year. He is the one you mentioned, O-line, run game. The other bright spot on this team has been that kid. He has been unreal. I wrote a story on him last week that ran Friday. Some people might have missed, just about his upbringing, and he's just been a hitter. There is a YouTube video attached to the story I wrote, Shane. I might have mentioned this to you. It's unbelievable, man. His film from his junior year, he was just flattening guys. I mean, it looks like the old Dick Butkus, like NFL films. I mean, he's just running guys over. It's like, you don't see it very often. I don't know what it was. I think he comes from pretty struggling background, single parent, one of 5 kids. He didn't go to the camps and get the reputation and the rankings and all the exposure. And you see a guy like that, and I mean, my Lord, he was an unbelievable player even coming out of high school. So he's gotten better every single year. That's the kind of stuff Billy's going to need with this program. He's going to need guys who develop like Ventrell Miller did, not under Billy, but just in general.
George has a text on the Titan MR text line, and I'll address this, but I want to get your thoughts. It's kind of long, but he goes, "Hey, Shane, is Billy losing this team? I saw the post on Twitter with Khalil Jackson. What's that all about?" It was fabricated, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I didn't even see. I saw the after of it. I didn't see it at the time. Look, come on. Losing the team. We're 7 games into this guy's first year, inheriting a mess. And as you pointed out, 3-11 in the SEC, worse other than Vanderbilt. I'm not jumping this guy's butt who sent it. I'm glad you're watching. Appreciate that. But it's like rushing to judgment with this whole situation. I get it. I mean, I used to be the master of that. I remember I told my editor at the Palm Beach Post in 2002, Zook wasn't working out after like the LSU game when they lost 36-7. He's like, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we're in like 6 games into his whole deal." No, that didn't work out. But Ron Zook he never articulated one sentence clearly in comparison to Billy Napier. Billy Napier is measured. He's got a plan. Now, I will say the one thing I wish Billy would change, Shane, is the messaging after games. I felt like he needed to come out after that LSU game and say this was unacceptable. That third down defense, man, we got to fix that. Fans deserve better. Instead of going into the whole how great the game is and the camaraderie and the bond and growing as men. I love that about him. It's aspirational. It's great. But I don't think fans want to hear that after you lose at home to LSU and the season's teetering.
Yeah, everybody's chiming in on what the Khalil Jackson. Yeah, he apologized, but it had nothing to do with LSU. He was flipping off a guy in the locker room in uniform, and somebody put something up there, "F this team." Now, like I said, Edgar, I could take a picture of you right now and put something, caption it on there, and post it on Twitter. And it ain't true.
I'm working with the militia movement. With
yes. So anyway,
there is. I'm sure they're upset kids. I'm sure they're saying stuff. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. They're impulsive. They say things. They get angry. There's infighting. I'm sure it's not rainbows and unicorns in that locker room or in that practice field. That does not mean Billy Napier's losing the team.
No, not at all. Early line from Andy here. I told you I got great listeners that do the research for us.
I'd say it should be 18 personally, but anyway.
They said anywhere from 16 to 21, depending on the service. So sounds about right, I guess.
Yeah.
So
you're not getting any action on Florida unless you're getting at least 17, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, Edgar. Time goes by way too fast. Who you got winning the golf tournament this weekend?
Oh, my God. It's a great field. I don't know. Rory's been playing lights out. Is he in it?
Yeah, he's in it. All the big boys on the real tour are playing this week.
I am going to watch. I mean, Rahm's been kind of finding something lately. I'd like to see him start getting his game back. I'm a big Rahm guy. He won in Spain. He's starting to show some signs. I love the turn. This course is going to be really firm and fast. It's that time of year. I like playing golf this time of year, Shane, and we need to get out and play. We keep talking about it because the courses start getting faster. I like fast greens. I like fast courses. It's going to be a good tournament. I'm looking forward to it.
No doubt about it. Edgar, great stuff as always, buddy. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me. See you.
Yeah, that's Edgar Thompson. You can follow Edgar on Twitter. Give us your Twitter handle real quick.
OS Gators.
That's it. OS Gators. Appreciate it, Edgar.
Thanks, man.
Yep. Ruse Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 353